What's up? This is Mohawk Matt. I'm from San Fernando Valley, right outside of Los Angeles.
All right, Matt. So let's get started today. So growing up, how was that for you?
Growing up was kind of cool. I mean, I grew up middle class in the San Fernando Valley, in the city of Mission Hills, in between Sun Valley and Mission Hills. Both my parents worked. My dad's Air Force vet. My parents worked really hard to give me everything I could. I went through private elementary school. Had a pretty decent childhood, played sports. Yeah.
What was the change for you that helped you get to who you are today?
I have to say, I was one of 4 white boys that went to like an almost all Mexican private school. And that kind of started my journey going down that path. I got involved with graffiti right outside of like 7th grade. Now, graffiti in the 90s was huge. It was a really big influence on me. It didn't matter whether you were white, Mexican, black. You grew up in the Valley. Most people in that time, we were getting involved with graffiti. Now, there was a lot of gang stuff going on as well. And those of us that didn't really want to go that serious of a route, we kind of clung to graffiti. It was a way to get known, getting famous, getting our names out there and having some sort of recognition. And for me, a kid that kind of struggled with identity, it was a huge thing, something I latched onto, and I was I can't tell you right now, if I close my eyes, I can still smell Krylon spray paint after midnight, like along the 405 freeway in the Valley. It's something that really I love, and to this day I've kind of touched back into it because it's easier and a little bit more accepted today than it was back then.
So how did you get involved with gangs? I know you said graffiti helped you get into it, but how can you give us a little bit more
detail? So like in the 90s, there was a lot of this. Like I said, the graffiti was making its own way. At the same time, the gangs were kind of pushing at us to not be taggers and join the gangs. And eventually, peer pressure, one thing led to another. And my tagging crew chose to get involved in a gang due to some serious choices some of my friends made. We actually kind of got pushed and our hand was forced. We had to join a local gang in the city of Sun Valley, and it ended up that way. It wasn't something I wanted to do. It was a choice that was made, and like any kid, I didn't want to be a pussy. I didn't want to be a bitch. I fell into peer pressure, and I did it. And no matter what's said throughout my gang career, I have a lot of really good friends I made in that neighborhood. I have a lot of solid friends that I will love. I don't see them much anymore because my life had to change and I had to get away from some of that stuff for drugs and prison lifestyle. But I went to war and did some work with some guys that, man, like I love these dudes. I'll always love them and they're in my heart. It's a big culture shock. It's a jump on the evolutionary ladder, I would say. Going from graffiti to gangs. I mean, we had some fist fights or some shootings maybe in the graffiti world, but when you join a gang, it's another step. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of stuff going on that you don't realize. Mind you, I chose to get involved with a gang that was heavily involved in a green light at that time. Now, none of us knew this. We weren't really paying attention to what we were doing. And it also causes you and your friends to go down a different road with like what happens. Your friendships kind of split up in these cliques and these gangs, and these friends become more enmeshed in this group, and this group changes with this group. You lose the bonds and the friendships that you made with these tagger kids growing up because now you're changing and things are going different, and these guys are becoming alcoholics, these guys are becoming shooters, these guys are going to prison now, and then these guys are becoming drug addicts because drugs are more apparent. I was selling drugs at the time, so me being a drug dealer, I didn't really try drugs until a little bit into my gang career. So like I watched some of my friends fall apart that were cool, and some of them I watched grow and become really amazing gang members. And I also watched my friends go in and out of prison. So it was a big change you have to get used to.
Yeah. So how did you get into drugs?
Well, I sold drugs for a while back when drugs were different, when speed was speed. There wasn't even crystal meth. I was selling old school speed. And I remember my homeboy Chubbs, who I don't talk to much anymore, but I'm always going to love and respect. He, one night, I never did drugs. I think I was 21 when I finally tried my first drug. I hadn't smoked marijuana. I hadn't fucking drank a beer. I mean, my first drug I tried was in Arleta. My homeboy peer pressured me in a front seat of his Monte Carlo to try crack. Now, boy, if you can remember anything to do with crack cocaine in the 90s, I'm talking to go from not doing anything, even a joint, to smoking crack. It was like New Jack City, if you've ever seen that movie. I'm talking like it was immediate addiction. I was hooked. Within 1 year, I lost my drug dealing business. I went from being a solid, reliable gang member to the homies don't really like me. My hygiene is suffering. Was a good gang member, I'm now someone that people are like, damn, I don't really want this dude coming around. Is he gonna steal from me? He's only gonna get high. He ain't reliable. We can't count on him. It was just a really big mistake for me. I wasn't one of those gang members that could do drugs and stay active in the hood. I have a very addictive personality. So the minute I chose drugs is the minute that all of this was not good anymore. I'm one of those guys that I either need to be sober or on drugs. I can't do both. A lot of my homies, they're very functional, doing drugs and gang banging and going to work and stuff. Not me, unfortunately. Yeah, so like towards the end of my senior year, I wasn't going to high school in Sun Valley. I went to Granada Hills High School, but traveling back and forth to the hood, there was a lot of, if anybody remembers the 90s were really different. They were really aggressive. Whether it was gangs or graffiti, it was very, very dangerous. And I remember my neighborhood was on Laurel Canyon Boulevard by Sheldon at the Fernangeles Park. And we used to cruise on the weekends. I don't know if anybody remembers, cruising was a huge thing too. All my homeboys had lowriders, Monte Carlos, luxury sports, super sports, Regals, Cutlasses. All the homeboys had them, and we would, fix them up, and we'd try to make our way to cruise, meet girls, and have fun on Laurel Canyon. But at the same time, see, our hood was 3 cities away from where the cruising was in San Fernando on like Rinaldi and Laurel Canyon. Now we kind of got along with San Fernando, kind of didn't. It was cool enough to where we didn't have to really worry about them trying to kill us. Maybe might have a fight. But to get to that safety spot of San Fernando, we had to travel the boulevard, Laurel Canyon, through Pacoima, which has 30 cliques. We didn't get along with 6 or 7 of these cliques. So I remember on the weekends, on Saturday nights, to get to the safety spot, traveling down Laurel Canyon, taking back streets was like an act of God. It was crazy to have to navigate this because like I'm not kidding when I tell people how dangerously different the 90s were than right now. To get to safely park by the Carl's Jr., sometimes it would be 3 or 4 shootings down Laurel Canyon through the Crazy Boys, through the Criminals, through Cayuga streets to get through Paxton and the Brownstones, where there's 2 cliques on the corner by the Richie Valens Recreation Center on Paxton and Laurel Canyon. And then to get farther, it was there was a couple summer nights where we had like 6 shootings. I'll never forget being chased through these side streets, just guns going off, and like the smell of gunpowder never leaves your nose, never leaves your brain. I can still smell it when you're shooting on and off. And then mind you, we're not even being chased by cops. Shootouts are going on and off down Laurel Canyon like it's the Wild West. And that when we finally get to San Fernando, which is taking probably an hour from Sun Valley, which should never take you longer than 12 minutes maybe, we just act like nothing happened. That's how dangerous these times were. Nothing happened. We get there, park the cars, get out, post up, get some beers, talk to girls. And thinking back on it now, it's like, it's just the insanity of going through the shootouts to get somewhere, to pretend like nothing happened, and to park our cars and to get out, get some beers and talk to some chicks. Like, do any of us remember what we just went through to get right here? It was like terrorism at its finest back then. And I tell people all the time, like, you really don't understand what it's like today unless you live through the 90s. If you live through some of those days in the Valley, it's like a whole nother world, man. And I have to say, like, I loved it, but now that I'm out of it, it was insanely scary. And good times and bad times at the same time. Those were high school, though. That was high school days.
And then shortly after, you said you got into the Marines?
No, shortly after that, I was getting myself in more and more trouble as the weeks went on. Drugs, gang banging. I think I was being sought after for a case, and I chose to join the Army first, but there was an incident that happened that canceled that. I re-enlisted in the U.S. Navy, which didn't really look for your felonies. I wanted to join the Marines. My goal was to be a fucking Marine. The Marines are really serious on your background. They wouldn't take you if you have felonies. So I went to the Army. An incident happened. I then re-enlisted in the U.S. Navy. And the Navy accepted me because they don't really care because you're out on a ship at sea. I enlisted. I passed my ASVAB test with really good scores. I was DC-2 on the SS Constellation, which, if you know, DC-2 is a fireman and a maintenance guy. I was deployed to Africa on a humongous aircraft carrier that's now decommissioned. And I had the time of my life. I did not want to come home. The Navy for me was something like, it opened my eyes to like a gang on a massive level. To be a part of this gang, and if you've ever seen a military ship, like we're talking like an aircraft carrier, when you walk up next to this thing, you look up and you're just like, It's almost like having sex for the first time. I had a massive erection looking at something that could cause this much damage, that travels the world to secure our borders for us. It was just something that was, to me, was the next step in like what a gang could be, but a legal gang and a good gang. And to be a fireman on this aircraft carrier was something else. Like, I'm already planning my future. I'm thinking I'm coming home, fireman, LA Fire Department, all of this. Now, about a year and a half into service, I have migraine headaches. Ever since I was a kid, I suffer from migraine headaches extremely bad to where I'm throwing up and I'm incapacitated. A year and a half into service, they keep sending me to the sick bay, and they eventually washed me out. I got a medical honorable discharge with the full pension because my migraine headaches started to affect me doing my job. And I get them, stress induces my migraine headaches. So they were coming on too frequently, but I still have my veteran status and a pension. So I did serve my country, and I volunteered. I wasn't drafted. So, but when I came home from that, I was so depressed because I didn't plan on leaving. I thought I could immediately go into the fire department when I got home. And in the 90s, they had this thing going on called affirmative action, where like white people, they didn't need that many white people in the fire department or the cops. They were looking for like Latinos and Asians. So even though I scored really high on the LA Fire Department test, they basically let me know, even though you're a veteran, we can't really use you. We have racial quotas we need to fill, and you'd be behind a desk. So I used that as an excuse to go back to gangs, and I went right back to my hood, started committing crime, doing drugs, selling drugs. And in hindsight, I was angry at the world for that, but in reality, it's like, okay, you got shut down. I should have done something else, but I used it as a way. I turned it negative and got myself in more trouble, which caused me at that time to get involved in a couple really bad drug deal situations, and I went to prison. I went to prison 3 times, a total of 19 years. My first time was 3 years and about 8 months. I came home for 90 days. I was immediately back on new charges. I did 3 years and 8 months again. I was home for 96 days. After the 96th day, I got myself involved in a home invasion robbery, in a drug deal, and I was back in prison for, I think I was sentenced to 13 years. No, I was sentenced to 9 years. I did 12 years and 6 months off that. So, and when I was in prison, I got involved in everything that I could. I didn't plan on coming home. My drug addiction grew. I don't talk about prison much because, like I've told people, I don't like people to get the impression that prison is cool. Prison is dangerous. It's fucking scary. I don't care how fucking tough you are, what you want to impress on people. I don't care what you want to tell people, how you need to earn your stripes. Prison is fucking scary unless you're on some little bitch ass level 1, level 2. And again, nowadays they combine everybody, so it's not like it was in the 90s and the millennium. Prison was scary, bro, and you could get killed for fucking breathing the wrong way. And the whites and the homies, our politics were so severe, you could literally get whacked for sitting at the wrong table. Things are different today, thank God, but I still want to impress upon people that prison is extremely dangerous and extremely scary unless you're in some fucking open dorm setting on a level 1. And I don't want people to think that it's cool, because it's not. Now, mind you, I made some good friendships that'll last a lifetime. I learned some really good things. I learned some valuable lessons. I learned a lot about respect and how to work in a group. I learned a lot of how to treat people with respect. And even if you don't like their race, even if you don't like someone, you're going to treat them with respect, because they're going to get their respect. And you're going to listen to rules. You're going to follow the rules, and you're going to contribute to a group, whether you like it or not. So there's a lot of good things you can take from prison. At the same time, there's also a lot of really bad stuff that you don't need to be involved in and bring home. And I've also, when I've come home and I've paroled, I've had to learn that there's a lot of that stuff that doesn't really work out here. There's a lot of stuff I had to unlearn. Like being a white boy, I got involved with my people and all the stuff we go through, and I had to remove tattoos. I had to unlearn some of those beliefs that I thought were important in prison, but when you come back home, you realize that shit doesn't work out here. You can't stab somebody for fucking cutting you off. You can't chase a car down because they honked the horn at you. There's a lot of things you need to realize that doesn't fly out here. And it took me a minute with a lot of PTSD. And because of that, I built a really, really big drug habit when I came home. And I spent 3 or 4 years really diving into some serious drug addiction with heroin and crystal meth. And it took me a while to start to realize that I had a problem and I needed to get sober.
Can you show us what it's really like?
Well, I can tell you one story that I told before. On a racial level, people always think it's cool to go run with a different group, and if it's cool on the streets because I listen to some songs or something, I'm going to run with this group or I'm going to run with this group. I was involved in a situation where I got to sit, unfortunately, and watch something go on with a kid who chose the wrong ethnic group to be a part of. This one white kid thought it would be cool to run with the blacks and be a Crip. Now, mind you, no disrespect to anybody, but some of these things have serious consequences, and the whites were not going to have that. And I watched this kid get warned repeatedly, you're not going to run with them. We're not going to have that. Now, when you're in prison, I want to remind some people that prison isn't like a rap video. It's not like social media. It's not like Instagram. Everybody's not a hippie, and everybody's not inclusive and cool with anyone's choices. In prison, what you do can and will affect the group around you, and you need to be very accountable. Just because you think it's cool to sag your pants and listen to YG doesn't mean you're going to run with them. And there are serious consequences for that. And this man was repeatedly warned, and the group he was trying to affiliate with realized we're not going to go to war with all these other two groups, the homies and the whites, over one kid who's racially confused. After being repeatedly warned, I remember these two individuals chose to raise their hand, and they were the ones who wanted to handle it. And I don't think I've ever seen an act of brutality that bad in my life. You can still smell the blood. I watched this kid go to yard after being told not to. I mean, bless his heart for holding his ground, you know what I mean? But these kids, as soon as he hit the yard, the people he was trying to assimilate with, they didn't even protect him. They didn't get his back like he thought they would. They didn't protect him. They didn't even warn him this was coming. This kid went to yard assuming he'd run with the blacks, and they turned their back, and these two skinheads fucking stabbed this dude probably 50 or 60 times, so many times that his head fell off his body and rolled away. And I never forget these skinheads kicking his head, and there being so much blood on the ground that it's turning into like thick syrup, and them sitting down waiting for the cops to respond, and the cops were not responding because even the cops were horrified. There was a female in the tower, I'll never forget, and she didn't shoot. She was supposed to have shot. She didn't because she was like frozen watching this. And these kids just sat down, dropped their knives, and said, we're done, come get us. And this kid died because nobody tried to help him make the right choice. Like, thank God somebody did for me. Now, I'm not saying that this happens all the time, but in this particular situation, it happened. And it's just an example of what can and will happen in prison. And I know social media today likes to glorify it with all these rappers talking about the joint, and it's awesome. More power to you. I've seen some different things, and that's just my experience.
So once you got out of prison, you said your drug problem got a lot, it escalated a lot.
I had really bad PTSD. I had worse PTSD from prison than the military. I came home washing my boxers in the sink, wearing shower shoes in my own shower. I wouldn't drink. My mom kept trying to tell me about this new place called Starbucks, and I'm drinking Folgers coffee. I didn't leave my room. I would have a girl brought over so I could fuck, and then she'd leave, and I would just do meth in my room because I didn't want to go out in the world. There was too many choices. There was too much to worry about. I didn't want to go back to prison, but my drug addiction built, and before you know it, I catch a couple violations because I can't pass a test for my parole officer who comes over. He does his best to work with me, but he eventually has to violate me. I did a couple violations, a couple rehabs for him, and then, I don't know, like 5 years after I was out, I paroled in 2013. I want to say like around 2018, I finally realized I hit that moment I was telling you earlier about rock bottom. I was broken. I was sitting in this room next to me right here that my mom decorated and built for me while I was in prison, and I tore it down into like a trap house. There was no carpet on the floor. The drywall was smashed. I had graffiti all over the walls. There was a candle. I ripped out the electricity. I'm sitting on a mattress that's covered in urine, sweat, filthy laundry. I'm watching porn. I'm doing meth so much that all I can do is watch porn, do meth, and fucking be uncomfortable with myself. And I remember towards the end, there was like 2 weeks where I was praying to Jesus and Odin. I didn't know which one would help me, but at that point I didn't give a fuck. I'd pray to a horse. Anybody help me get out of this shit. I just didn't care. And praying to Jesus and Odin, because I believe in them both, somebody answered. Because after 2 weeks, on my last day, I remember I did 17 shots of meth in all my veins with a needle. And the last one I did on my privates, and nothing was working. And I wasn't missing the shots. And I remember after being exhausted of doing it, there's probably enough drugs in my body at this point to more than Kurt Cobain had when he overdosed. And I remember finally putting this needle down after that last shot thinking, holy shit, my prayers are being answered. Jesus, Odin, it doesn't matter. One of you motherfuckers jumped up for me. And I start crying, and I never forget running out of that room into this hallway and my little mom hearing me running up the stairs. Are you ready? Are you ready? And I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. Please don't make me go back in that room. And she moved me downstairs into that front living room, got me on a waiting list to Tarzana Treatment Center in Lancaster. And that was May 18th, 2018. I've been sober since then. And I tell people this because they need to understand that as horrible as this is going to sound, the reality of drug addiction is you can't get sober for your kid. You can't get sober for your husband, for your mom, for the job, for the car, for the Rolex, for whatever you want. As horrible as this sounds, even your kids won't get you sober. You have to hit this place of just giving up. Until you're ready to give up. I was willing to scrub someone's shitty toilet if they told me that would keep me off drugs. You have to be willing to put your kids and your job to the side for a while. Even if you lose the job, even if the family never comes back, in order for you to get sober, you have to put it all to the fucking side and realize I have to worry about myself for a while. Everybody else, the kids too, they're on hold. I'm sorry, but I have to worry about myself and fix myself, and then I can go back to you later. And if you're still there, thank you. If you're not, it's my fault you're not there. We have to look at ourselves. And unless you're willing to do that and hit the rock bottom that I did, the statistics aren't real high for you making it. And I would love to see everyone get sober, but the reality is a lot of us aren't going to make it. And unless you hit that desperate place of being broken, recovery probably won't come. But if it comes, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of work you got to do, and you're going to be really uncomfortable for a while.
And if you had one thing to say to a little homie or anyone, a child if you had, or anything, what would you say to them? Words of advice.
There's a little voice inside of us that always warned me if it was right or wrong. Every time I was out on the streets with the homies, I hate to say it, but my homies had good advice, and I did have some good homies that would try to school me right, like a lot of us did back in the days. Of course, we had some negative homies, but I remember this little voice inside of me always warned me, go home. This isn't right. Or, this isn't right what you're doing. Listen to that voice inside you. Don't listen to the homies sometimes. Listen to that voice inside you. It won't lead you wrong.